welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. We are here with some of the finest humans I know on the planet Earth, Men the Dude Stern and Golan Ramraz. And Golan, I got to give it to you. You've been a champ. You've had some health scares recently, and you always show up. So good on you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. But yeah, it has been quite interesting. I've been in the hospital more in the last month than I have in the last 10 years. Hopefully this is the last of it. Last night was my final IV in my arm moment. Hopefully. I'm feeling much better.
It's interesting you say that. I used to have a friend that had never been to the hospital in his whole life, and then once he went, it wouldn't stop. But he was a lot older than you. So I wish you nothing but health and happiness, and please take it easy on yourself. Anywho, I hope everybody had a great weekend. You know, Mend, I want to go to you first because I find this to be amazing. Tucker calls out loud at Turning Point USA event saying that Jeffrey Epstein is a Mossad spy asset. And then when he's challenged by Naftali Bennett, former prime minister of Israel, brilliant guy, and says, I was the leader of Mossad, I think I would know. Tucker replies, this is very threatening, and come on my show. So basically anybody could say anything. You could say anything out loud, man. So I say, Tucker Carlson, you're a Qatari asset. Prove us wrong. Come on our show, man.
One is he is a Qatari asset. And two, good on Naftali Bennett for pushing back on that ridiculous narrative. You know, the most likely explanation, I say this again and again, is probably the explanation. And the fact that the U.S. Department of Justice gave Epstein a sweetheart deal, and they said he's one of our guys. And all of these people that were in power have showed up at his island or protected him from prosecution over the years, just makes you think, I mean, logically, he was a U.S. asset. That's the most likely logical explanation. To do this stretch and say,
I'm sorry, man. I know you just got started, and I don't want to interrupt right away. I don't give a shit about Jeffrey Epstein, and I don't mean I don't want people to be brought to justice, and I don't mean I don't want to know what happened, and I don't mean if there's a client list that I want it released. I don't mean that. I mean that this became the purity test for the entire party is one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
We're going to get into it, but I agree with you. We're going to get into it.
We all decided to shoot ourselves in the foot like this. This is so. In fact, wait. Let me just say one thing. I'm sorry, and I know we're going to get into it, Judah, and I don't mean to go off. I'm going to say one quick thing, and then, Mend, I'll hand you the mantle back. The fact that Judah asked a question about Tucker Carlson being at TPUSA, spouting lies, and then the prime minister of a country responded, and then he said, I'm going to keep spouting lies and I'll invite you on my show. And your response is to talk about who Jeffrey Epstein was or what was going on with this case, means that we have lost the plot. Not just Tucker has lost the plot, but we have lost the plot. That's it. I will let you continue, but I'm going crazy that anyone even is responding to the Tucker thing by talking about Jeffrey Epstein. This isn't about Jeffrey Epstein.
No, you're right. It's not about Epstein. It's about Carlson, and he has become a vehement anti-Israelite. He hates that country and he sides with Qatar, right? So these are the guys that backed him. So why is he doing it? And how do you deflate that? So to say that Epstein is just a nothing burger misses the point as well. A lot of Americans see him as the symbol of the global elites. And like we talked about before, crazy nut jobs like Alex Jones talked about this island that they may have where elites go to rape kids. Okay, it all turned out to be pretty true.
Okay.
And that's what
they
people
still
have
have nothing to do with. This still has nothing to do with Epstein, though.
I think that there's two things happening here. There's a conflation of people being outraged at this guy and all the people who helped him. It seems like they're getting away with it. And then there's the other conflation where the anti-Israelite Jew haters are piling on because they think that this is great to pin this whole thing on Israel. And what the government could do is just come out and say, look, he was our guy. We can't release the information, but we're going to bring everybody to justice. My
answer to you on that, Mend, is that it doesn't matter if they do that, because this is not about Epstein. Tucker Carlson doesn't care about Epstein. And by the way, most of the people you're talking about, don't care about Epstein either, but they've been convinced that they do. The Google searches for who is Jeffrey Epstein has jumped 1,700% since all of this BS started. Why? Not because people listened and were like, oh my God, I'm enraged about this Jeffrey Epstein thing. They don't know who he is, okay? And so what happened? You had all these talking heads who are looking for any excuse to destroy the party, any excuse to destroy the country, any excuse to vehemently go against the Jews, of course. And as a result, all these people have heard it, and now it becomes a topic they care about. Just like what happened with Gaza. Nobody knew what Palestine was, nobody knew what Gaza was, and nobody gave a shit until all the talking heads were like, if you don't care about Gaza, then you're in trouble. You're the problem. And it's the same thing here. They didn't know about it, and now they think it's the only thing that matters.
I like to do this thing where you hit them where it hurts. And where it hurts is on this bullshit notion that he was an Israeli asset. Bannon and Laura Loomer both agreed on something today, which was that the president should have a special investigator. He should assign a special investigator and say, we're going to investigate this case and we're going to bring these people to justice. If they could do that, great. That's all that needs to be done.
Is it? Because
I'm not
they're looking for
Tucker.
is an excuse to go after all of this. And the last one was Israel, and the next one was Iran, the next one's Gaza, the next one's Epstein. They're just going to keep doing it. What's going to be the next one? They're going to find the next one. This one happened to be juicy, so they jumped on it and made it a thing. But they'll make the next one a thing.
There will always be something. There will always be something to go after the Jews, and let them do that. But this one in particular, there is an answer to. And I think you take each one on a case-by-case basis. And the answer to this one is assign a special investigator, go through the files, figure out what happened, and bring those that are culpable to justice.
Well, here's the reality, guys, and it's this. They apparently did this. Bondi did this. Bongino did this. And Patel did this. Bongino has not resigned from the FBI. Patel has not resigned from the FBI. And Pam Bondi is still in the FBI. I think the point Golan is trying to bring up, and he could correct me if I'm wrong, this, and we've all agreed on this, I think, is that this has nothing to do with Epstein. Just like with Iran, with the bombing, when they all coalesced, it's a mini coup within the MAGA party that we're watching that has been set up almost perfectly. They failed with Iran, right?
No repercussions. No Americans got killed.
Right. No World War III, which is what we were promised. We were promised by Tucker and Bannon and Flynn and everybody else, World War III. You could go back. And before I get to both of you, I want everybody that's listening to our show to listen to the last 2 months of episodes. And if anybody could tell me something we've said incorrectly, I will be so humbled. From Mend to Golan. And Golan, just hit on that point a little bit more about what that mini coup.
The mini coup within the GOP has been something that first of all, we've been talking about it a lot, and some people might look at it as too much. I don't think so, because this is legitimately where things can fall apart. Not only within the party, but if we do this, if we follow these Pied Pipers into hell and our party falls apart, and we're not allowed to go forward any further, and we're stopped in the AOCs of the world and the Mamdanis of the world, and all the other insanity takes over, guess what? We're done. As a country, we're done. And so this coup, whoever it is that's within the party that is doing this, most of them, I do believe, are being paid. And some of it is pretty on the surface obvious that it's happening. I don't have the receipts, but I do have eyeballs and a working cerebral cortex.
By the way, just so you know, online there is a receipt that Qatar is the one that set up the meeting with the president of Iran. So just so everybody knows, there is an online receipt. But men, finish us off on this, please.
Well, the only thing that I'm going to say is that you can't just write the whole thing off as nothing because they're using it as a tool to libel Israel. It's a bad strategy, because when you do that and you say there's nothing here, everybody knows there's something there. So that's not the right strategy. From a strategic standpoint, what you want to do is you want to have the president assign a special investigator, go through it, bring those accountable to justice, and possibly make a statement that he was a U.S. asset, a U.S. CIA asset, which he said himself he was. And when they gave him a sweetheart deal, that first sex trafficking case out of Florida, they told the prosecutor and the judge that he's a CIA asset. He's our guy. So there's a simple answer to this without feeding into the whole Tucker nonsense. Could still blunt their teeth, as we say on Passover. You could blunt their teeth, take their argument away by having an investigation and coming out and saying that he was a U.S. asset.
You know, Golan, I find this amazing, by the way, and I get Men's point. I don't necessarily agree with his point, We don't have to agree on everybody's points.
That's
But I
fine.
want people to think about something for 1 second when he's being accused of being a Mossad agent, right? Because you've seen the feedback I get sometimes and you get on Truth. So this is the same Mossad that blew half of Hezbollah's balls off. This is the same Mossad that had Israeli agents in Iran that at the exact moment that the bombs hit, half almost the scientists were killed, the top generals were killed, and they set up a drone factory in Iran. Yes, this Mossad decided to take some putz from Long Island or wherever he is that was teaching in school and said, it's going to be this guy, go on. A 35-year strategy.
Yeah, I could keep ranting about this all day. I think that we have to stop taking the bait. The idea that they're going to continue to accuse us of something, whether that is they're accusing Trump of something, whether they're accusing the Jews of something, and we are constantly playing defense. So instead of moving forward and saying, you know what, you voices that don't matter, shut up, get out of the party. If you don't like, go over there, go in your corner and rant to your people. That's fine. We're going to focus where we need to focus. We need to focus on the wins that we've had. Because I'll tell you, I was listening to a video, something on CNN, where they interviewed a bunch of people at TPUSA, and they were asking them, "Do you care about this Epstein thing?" And one of the guy was saying, yeah, I didn't really know much about it until recently, and now I know that anything Trump says, if they don't give us those files, can't be trusted. But I trust J.D. Vance because he wants those files released. I was just like, everything they want you to buy, you are buying. Everything, you didn't even know about this. And now you think it's the only way you can trust Trump? You are a MAGA person at TPUSA who has forgotten about all the promises kept. That is nuts. That is propaganda weaponization. And if we are constantly falling for it and responding to it, then we are constantly the fly in the web and not the spider. And I just think it's a foolish way.
I just want to say this. I think the discussion we're having is the discussion people should be having. I think Men's point is very valid, and I think your point is very valid. And as long as people could have these types of discussions, I think that's what moves things forward. That's just me personally. Men, you predicted something, predicted your assessment of the situation with Trump and Iran was spot on, and your prediction with Trump and Russia was spot on. And now today, Trump has announced that he's going to be sending Ukraine weapons to fight back. And bravo on your assessment of the situation. And he's going to get feedback, of course, from this. He's going to get flack from this, of course, from everybody in faux MAGA. But he made this promise. He tried to work out a deal, like you said, and here we are.
It's not that I have a crystal ball or anything. The strategy just seemed to make sense. Is that first you go in,
Could just say thank you, Judah.
Thank you, Judah. Thank you, Golan. You guys, I wouldn't have made those predictions without the wise and input and wisdom that you guys provide on a daily basis. So it's a group effort. When he was going to go in and negotiate with Russia, and the ridiculous Karens on the left were screaming that he refuses to condemn Putin and all this other stuff, he used the exact same strategy with Iran. It's the same thing. You go in, you say, first I'm going to negotiate. It's funny because the contrast between the two different countries is telling. When he went to negotiate with Russia, you had Zelensky in the White House chirping, he is a war criminal, stupid things. And that's when Trump had to smack him down and say, don't tell us that we're at risk. Don't tell us what to do. You don't have any cards. He really berated the guy in public. Why'd he do that? Because that was what would provide an opening to the Russians to say, okay, this is not just a guy who's standing there screaming to the last man like Biden did, that he was just going to fund this war forever. He's actually trying to take some actions to rein this guy in, rein in his crazy rhetoric, at the same time, give the Russians an off ramp and say, look, let's negotiate. We'll make it economically feasible for you and valuable for you if you come to the table. He did the exact same thing with Iran. But the difference is that while he was negotiating with Iran, you did not have Bibi Netanyahu chirping, they are war criminals. He was just sat there. He sat there and he let the bigger partner in this thing, the Americans, take lead and do their thing. And when the Iranians played around, they effed around, and then they found out at day 61 they got bombed. So, yes, I applaud Trump for the way he's handling this.
I gotta say, I love what you're saying. I totally agree. And I actually think maybe this is my version of a conspiracy theory. But there's a little piece of me that believes that when Trump bombed Iran, we all missed the real story, which was that message wasn't just to Tehran. That message was to all enemies of America and especially to Moscow. Because now, as you pointed out, Mend, in one of our previous episodes, before it was like Obama's, here's the line. I mean, here's the line. I mean, here's the line. But this time it was, you got 60 days. And on day 61, like you said, FAFO, right? And now Trump has said 50 days. And it's one of those things where it's like the last guy who didn't pay, we know what happened to him. You know, this is the thing I talked about when Trump is half politician, half mob boss. This is that moment.
Absolutely. You're correct. That is exactly what he did. That was a message to North Korea, Russia, even China to an extent. You know, it's interesting. I think during Trump's first administration, on the Chinese premier's first visit to the White House, Xi was at a state dinner at the White House, and Trump walks into the room, walks over to him, leans over and whispers in his ear, "I just wanted you to know, I just took out Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC general." And he whispered that to him. It wasn't a threat or anything. It was just to say, we're willing to take tough action when we need to. Now let's have dinner. Like you say, like a gangster sat down and he did that. And that was a clear message, not just to Iran that we'll take out your top general who was killing American soldiers during the entire Iraq war, but to Xi.
Well said. And Golan, it's extremely important. They just did a poll where 60% of Democrats still believe there was Russian collusion. 60% of Democrats. Let me repeat that. 60% of Democrats, whether roughly, say 70 million people voted. You guys are far more. So it's about 40 million Democrats still believe in Russian collusion. Go on.
Didn't they just open an investigation into Comey and Brennan?
Yes, they did.
Russian collusion, right? For that whole hoax.
For Russian collusion. And the amazing thing is we had $32 million investigation by Mueller. We had the media coverage nonstop. And ultimately, the conclusion of all of it was no criminal conspiracy. The Steele dossier, we know already. All of these stories, they're buying it because, and this is to the point that we were talking about earlier with the Epstein thing, they are being told what to think. They are being told what to care about. They're being told what's important. So when I hear people say to me, by the way, that define people on both sides, the election was the most secure ever. There was no media obfuscation of the lab count, the tear gas, the protesters, the whipped people at the border. Like, there's 1,000 of these, right? You know, injecting bleach. I think I may have told you guys this story, is that my wife came to me at some point and saw how many lies they were telling about Israel in the press. And she said, is it possible that if they're lying this much about Israel, that all the stuff they said about Trump was a lie too? Can we look each one of them up? And I sat with her in my office, and one lie at a time. I looked it up. Let's watch the whole video. They should be condemned. Absolutely. She's like, they never showed that part. No shit. And so the fact that people are still buying it just proves what we're saying earlier, is people are sheep. And all we need is enough evil shepherds like Carlson and the rest of them, like Carlson, thank you, men, and the rest of them, and the Bannons and everybody else, to point them in the direction of where they want vitriol to go, and wind people up and let them go. And even if they don't know what it is, like that guy that was interviewed, I never heard of Epstein before, but now it's the only thing I care about. That is just brainwashing. So the fact that people care now, sure they do. Sure, like Gaza, like everybody's got a Palestinian flag in their bio, right? Why? Because they were brainwashed into believing it.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I have a friend, same thing, smart guy, fairly smart guy. We all know him. That I had to have a phone call with him one night where I had to prove to him that Trump never said for people to take bleach. And listen, literally, he's listening to the audio, and he, as I'm on the phone with him, and then I had to go through this whole thing with him about Soros being who Soros is, and this not being some vast right-wing conspiracy. And at the end of the day, he said, you're right, still doesn't, vote for Trump. But
good for you, because I had this conversation with a friend, and despite sitting together and watching the video and me pausing it and explaining each word, she still believes he said inject bleach. That's that deep.
You're right. And Mend, there's something I wanted to discuss with both of you, because you're both really specialists on this issue. And as we're watching the way Trump is handling Gaza, before I get into the French thing, Mend had brought up this point, Golan, which I think it was Mend, or it might have been you. you both bring up brilliant points, and was that Trump's plan really was what's going on, which is to push him as far in as humanly possible into a nature preserve in Gaza and then deal with that situation. And I think we're really witnessing that now. The danger is of what people might call that said place. But I really think we're watching the Israeli military basically taking over 90% of the territory that they used to own, that was theirs, that was Israeli territory.
Yeah, Israeli territory that they gave to the Gazans and gave to the Palestinians in Gaza and said, this is yours, do something with it. You wanted a land of your own, prove that you can handle it in the same way that I do to my children after they've been misbehaving for such a long time. And I say, all right, you want a dessert? Prove that you eat all your vegetables. And then if they do, then they get their dessert. And if they start chucking it up the walls, they don't get anything. And so in the same way, we already tried this. We saw what they did with it. They got billions and billions of dollars. They poured it all underground and into weaponry and into all the rest. And so we know that they're not capable of doing this because we tried it already and they failed. They threw all the vegetables on the floor. They don't get dessert. But to your point, yes, right now, this may have been Trump's plan. I don't know, and I don't want to have a crystal ball, and we don't play on the rumor. But I'll tell you, if it was his plan, pretty good one. The amount of BS online about what this place is calling concentration camp are such ludicrous accusations that that I honestly, like, I don't want to respond to the Epstein stuff. I don't even want to respond to it. It's so dumb that giving it oxygen will just make it continue to live longer, and it doesn't deserve oxygen.
Here's the deal, is that we talked about this and I recommended that they do something like this. I called it the sieve, where you have the population go through a security checkpoint that's manned by AI cameras and they could figure out who the good guys and the bad guys are, apprehend the bad guys and let the good people, the innocent people go through. And then you have a sanitized environment where the people of Gaza could remain while Israel kills the rest of the Hamas guys that are outside of that. The Israelis are also going into these areas and they're losing troops on a daily basis. And it would be much better to do what Assad's dad did in Hama in Syria when he had a town that was trying to uprising against him. He purged all of the people from that town from the military. They surrounded the town. And I don't think that Israel should do that yet. They should first do the sieve, where you get the innocent civilians out of the way. And then you just carpet bomb and flatten the rest of the place. You do not send your boys in. Every single child lost is a tragedy. And I'm talking about these soldiers. They're young, full of life, and they didn't ask for this. That is the main key point. The Palestinians, Hamas, started this. They get what's coming, and what should be coming is a complete flattening of that entire region. And anyone who's in a tunnel gets locked in the tunnel. You bulldoze the shit out of the top of it once it's all bombed, and you move on, and they will just die down there, and that's good. And then,
especially when the people who are in Gaza are actively saying, and you can go on right now on Twitter or on X, and you can see that they're tweeting this stuff. I'm going to read you the tweet from the terrorists. Every inch of Gaza's land has turned into ambushes hunting down the occupation soldiers. There is no place in Gaza safe for the Zionists. Leaving Gaza is not like entering it, even if you fortify yourselves with tanks, blah, 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 blah. This is being said. And you know what? We don't have to put our children in harm's way.
Let's say who this is. This was stated by the group that funds Hamas, the group that harbors Hamas. This is from the head of Qatar's government-run Al-Shaka news agency. These are the people that we're allegedly calling our trading partners, American preferred trading partners. They almost have NATO status, Qatar. And this is their head of their news agency saying this. Every inch of Gaza's land has turned into ambushes, hunting down the occupation soldiers, as if the indigenous Israelis are somehow the colonizers and the colonizing Arabs are somehow indigenous. So it's all topsy-turvy.
But Golan, this goes back to, and by the way, I want to apologize for everybody listening to this. We will have some technical difficulties during this show. Our sincerest apologies for that. But Golan, this goes to the French court allowing all of and they say this, all of the Gazans asylum in France due to IDF persecution. Take away that falsehood and that lie for a second. The whole thing is they're calling them Gazans. They're not calling them Palestinians, which goes to the point that many people have brought up, which was Gaza was a two-state solution that did not work. Because if they were Palestinians, they would be called Palestinians. They're being called Gazans. And nobody's bringing that up.
Exactly. Not one person has mentioned it. If these are Gazans, remembering that Israel pulled out entirely of Gaza in 2005, and let's remind everybody that I don't mean just militarily, the Jews were forcibly removed from their homes by the Israeli military. They dug up dead Jews from cemeteries and left them greenhouses that were blossoming. And that was their attempt to give them a state. Try it out, see if you can handle it. Like I said, failure. The reason why they're being called Gazans and not Palestinians is because, oopsie, it's a tacit admission that they are not stateless victims. And so if they've been given the keys to their own territory and turned it into a terror state, they don't deserve a second chance. The wording of this, the terminology on the page proves that. It's the thing that nobody wants to talk about. And it's like nobody noticed it. There's a great clip that I think we shared with each other where there's a guy, some anti-Israel douchebag in the United Nations that keeps talking about how, the Israelis deserve their own state. Israel deserves to be a state. Israel, and he means Palestine. And the guy behind him finally whispers in his ear and he's like, oh. That's what this is. This was the accidental admission that Gaza already was a state. This was our two-state solution. We tried it. You screwed it up.
And I just want to explain to people what we're talking about. We're talking about 24 miles to 25 miles of land. So for people to get a little perspective on that, that's almost double the size of Manhattan, of New York Island. Just so people understand how large 24, 25 miles is, man. But go ahead.
Yeah, look, the French are digging themselves into a deeper hole. They did it with Algeria, right? That worked out fantastically. There's people stabbing each other on French streets, yelling Allahu Akbar every day. The entire Europe that went down this ridiculous road of mass immigration without assimilation, they're feeling the repercussions now. Every single day on X, you'll see some white kid getting beaten up by jihadis, some female getting attacked, sexually molested by jihadis. There's massive rape gangs in the UK by jihadis. It's all the same group. And I'm not saying that all Muslims are incompatible, but these Muslims, these radical jihadis are incompatible with the West. It just does not work. And we're seeing that in Minnesota, and we're seeing it in parts of this country where they come, they colonize, they do not assimilate, they do not integrate. They live like parasites off the land and off the fat of the land, and they're scamming every single social program that we have.
It's even worse than not integrating, because they actually actively believe that a secular republic is evil. They think Jews are evil and gays are evil and women need to be in burlap sacks.
They've come out and said their plan. Their plan is
they've been
to take over through immigration. Take over through immigration.
And
they want Sharia law. Yes. Yeah.
But go on to the point that Mend is bringing up is that somebody is running for mayor in Minnesota, same thing as New York. And I really do love what he's just said with mass integration without assimilation and no integration. I think that really sums up what's going on right now. But this is a frightening thing. And somebody pointed out this is the domino effect that we're witnessing in Minnesota. Mind you, very Somali, a lot of Somalians. So talk about that. Go on.
Well, so what we're talking about is a guy named Omar Fateh. And Omar Fateh is running for mayor in Minneapolis. The thing is, this is actually, I think, not an example of not assimilating. I think this is an example of wearing a mask in order to pretend you're assimilating. And this is the Mamdani effect, right? We see it metastasizing across America. They see it's working in New York. They're playing against grievance politics, and they're wearing this progressive costume, and underneath, radical, deeply destabilizing reality, because these people aren't politicians. They're cultural insurgents, right? These are just, as we talked about a lot, jihadis. So if you want to burn down the system and rebuild it in the image of Islam or Islamism or whatever you want to call it, well, this is the same thing all over again. But now we are Mamdani Midwest edition with this Fateh guy. And this is a great place, actually, very smart of them. They're not bad at being colonizers. This is what they've done since the inception of the religion. So this is ground zero for the next progressive hijack. Why? Because of what you just said. Minneapolis has so many Muslims in it, that this may actually work. He may actually get elected. And he's saying the same stuff that Mamdani's saying. Let's freeze rent and let's make everything socialism. And I also want to be part of the Democratic Socialists of America and all the rest. This is weaponizing the compassion that stupid people on the left who don't understand how things really work. They just hear it and that sounds good. And we all get free groceries. And then they vote for this guy. And how quickly is it going to be until all the women have dog collars on? Pretty fast, if you ask me.
That's absolutely correct. The people that even think about electing these people are suffering from such bad case of self-hate, Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, it's a combination for you to actually want to invite and accept and elect a person that hates your way of life. You have to have such a big deficit in your moral compass and what's right and wrong. So let's see what happens in Minnesota. I think they will elect that guy. I hold a lot of hope that somehow the New Yorkers will band together and re-elect Eric Adams, and Sliwa and Cuomo will drop out of the race and all band behind Eric Adams, Mayor Eric Adams, and save that city.
Well, we know that's not happening because Cuomo has once again said that he's not dropping out. But go on, I want to get to something really important because you're a wonk and this is right up your alley, because we see people all the time saying, sue, you got to sue, right? And people do not realize how hard it is to sue because of the Supreme Court. You have a famous case in 1964, it's the New York Times versus Sullivan, which was against Alabama, where Alabama tried to sue the New York Times. And the Supreme Court said you can't unless it's basically you could prove malice behind it. People like Tucker will fall into this category. It's a very dangerous precedent. And people are always talking about in our country why it's so important to have the Supreme Court. So many cases go on that we're still
I will
dealing
also
with
point
now.
out that Tucker Carlson regularly reminds us that he is not a journalist, he is a pundit. So interesting how we get to do whatever we want to do all the time. This particular case, like you said, from the 60s, so we're talking about decades ago, before I was born, this thing was already in place, but the consequences are wrecking the country now. It's like we've been saving it up. Okay, so just for layman's terms, for everybody to understand, it basically says if you're a journalist, you are allowed to lie, unless someone can read your mind and prove that you meant to lie. If they can't do that, then you could be like, I was just asking questions, like the podcasters do. Or you can say, I thought it was true at the time. Like when they interviewed the head of the BBC News after he reported on the hospital bombing that never happened by Israel, that turned out to be an Islamic jihadi rocket. And they asked him, so you got that wrong. And he was like, yeah, and I'm not sorry. I reported what I thought was right at the time. Tough shit. And that was that. And he just stuck it up, everybody, despite the fact that it caused multiple people to have hate crimes committed against them and all the rest. This case in the United States, though, created an elite protected class of people. And that protected class of people are media figures. These people can destroy reputations. They can twist facts. They can gaslight the public. There is no legal way to hold them accountable, even if your life is ruined as a result of it. So if you think about it, this is basically, if you take the First Amendment, we always talk how much we love the First Amendment, and we do. Now imagine if you took that and you jammed it full of cow testosterone and steroids, right? And then you handed it to all the journalists and said, everybody else doesn't get it. Parents don't get it. People being slandered, people whose lives are being ruined, they don't get it. The media gets it, which means it's not freedom, it's privilege, right? And especially in today's world where everything is poured over with a granular set of tweezers, but journalists can do whatever they want. And Tucker specifically lying about Israel and Jews constantly. And what he just did at Turning Point was the craziest version of it, attacking an ally of the United States, spinning conspiracies, cozying up to people who hate the Jews, getting paid by people who hate the Jews. He can call Jewish donors globalist puppet masters. And he can say that every pedophile is on the Mossad payroll, and nothing you could do. You can't sue him. So everyone who says, oh, I hope the Mossad sues him and Philly's broke, good luck. I don't understand how you think that's going to happen. If you know, please let me know.
You can't sue, and that's not going to do anything. The best thing to happen to Tucker would be what happened to him after his ridiculous Iran bombing predictions. There is no World War III, so he looks like an idiot. And then when it comes out that this guy Epstein was a CIA asset, he's going to look like an idiot again. And that's it. And he keeps on losing credibility. There are some people that love what he's doing. They love the Candace Owen types. They love, the anti-Israelite thing. Fine. Double down on that. That'll be your audience. But you've lost the mainstream. You've lost the sane people. And I hope your podcast just implodes.
I want to counter what you're saying just a little bit, because one of the things we talk about constantly on this show is the horseshoe theory, right? Where the left meets the right. And what we've been witnessing, especially at Turning Point USA, was a lot of that action, of that happening, where you look at AOC on Friday saying the exact same talking points as somebody like Tucker. So I agree with you with what you're saying is let's do this and that might happen. But at the end of the day, the horseshoe is still there. And that's a very scary thing.
That is scary. It's scary that they're mainstreaming a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, there's no real fix. My fix, the thing that I'm proposing, is just expose them for the frauds that they are. And then hopefully more people will see that this guy's predictions are not accurate. His takes are bad takes. And other people may have better takes. So you counter bad info with good info. I'm all about that. I'm not hearing any other solutions. I don't hear anything else.
Idea.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this idea because to me, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm being pessimistic and you're going to be right. And it's happened a handful of times, right? That I've said, I don't understand what's going on with these tariffs. And then look at you. Good job. Right. So hopefully I'm wrong again. I pray that I am wrong again. But to me, it doesn't matter if Tucker is wrong, because being wrong is not a liability in his world. It's part of his business model. He gets proven wrong. He pivots to the next conspiracy theory. His audience doesn't blink. He's not selling truth. Nobody cares about truth. He's selling rage. He's selling who to hate. So he makes a wild accusation. He gets the attention. It gets debunked. And then immediately, remember, Iran, this, that, I'm going to do the president of Iran, and Iran's going to cause World War III. None of that happened. And the president of Iran looked like an idiot. Guess what happened 7 seconds later? He's on stage at TPUSA, so it didn't hurt his credibility. He still got invited to that massive event. And then next conspiracy theory. Epstein, and by the way, anyone who serves in the IDF also should lose their citizenship or whatever it was. It's like, oh my God, he's 2 conspiracies ahead by the time you fact check the first one. So he's just doing a political version of a shell game. Look over here.
I have a couple of things. TPUSA had him on their schedule for a long time, before he did the Iran thing, before any of that stuff.
So what? I know places that have canceled him, that I've brought this up. Places like the American Spectator that was supposed to honor him this year rescinded that offer when he did his whole.
I applaud that.
I think that's great. When he did his whole Russia thing. So yeah, you know what? Charlie Kirk has a responsibility of running this thing. He's teaching the future youth, and with that,
could have done better for sure. I had a bigger problem with them inviting Dave Smith. I had a bigger problem with that guy, who's not an expert in anything, who's a self-hating Jew, who's just takes the contrarian point of view at every single turn. So you have a guy who's not a conservative. He's not in the party. Why would you introduce that to your audience at Turning Point? There was no reason for that. And the whole thing, talk about rumors. The whole thing was just speculating on rumors, whether or not what's-his-face was a Mossad spy. Is that what the whole thing was?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
And what's interesting though is I didn't, he was debating Josh Hammer, which I indirectly in the past have debated Josh Hammer without me knowing, because the Daily Caller Golan has this like where you write your point of view versus their point of view, and it was my point of view about Trump over DeSantis, and he was the opposing view. I ended up getting picked up by Trump. And anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'm just a little proud of myself for that. But again,
I think that's great. But can I just say that? Look, there was a moment, right, when Trump was running. There was this time around. There was a moment when Donald Trump Jr. had a big event in Nashville. Remember this? In July 2024, and who was on the bill? Candace Owens. She'd been on the bill prior to her going completely off the rails. She'd already been partially off the rails, but not completely off the rails. And she stayed on the bill until 3 days before the event took place. And to their credit, they removed her from the bill. So I don't care that he was on the bill prior to making new accusations and prior to being, it wasn't prior to him being a Qatari stooge. It wasn't prior to him doing half of the stuff that he's done. So who cares that he was already on the bill? That means nothing to me.
I think you're 100% correct. And this goes to a conversation. I want to close up this episode with it because this goes to a conversation that Mend and I had over the weekend. We go back and forth, and well, all of us go back and forth. But there's confusion oftentimes with the First Amendment. And we've had this conversation on this show. I am for everybody being platformed. I don't want anybody to be deplatformed. But man, we spoke about this. There's a difference between having a platform and being platformed. And that's what happened with Tucker and Dave Smith this weekend. They were platformed. That's what we are against. Not taking away their shows or censoring them or anything like that. We're simply saying don't offer them that extra platform. Is that correct, Mend, how I phrased that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Turning Point USA is a fantastic organization. And I think they erode part of their fantasticness, part of their credibility by having guys like Tucker and Dave Smith on. It's not helpful to what they stand for. It doesn't go with their moral compass. It just doesn't line up with anything that is America first, conservative first, God and country, family first. Those two guys are not. So those two guys are Hamas. Those two guys are Iran first, Russia first, lunatics that are just anything but pro-America. And if you're a pro-American party with an American first stance, why would you have those two guys on?
By the way, this is exactly right, because the idea of if you are platforming somebody, it means you are giving them a mic, you're giving them a stage, you're giving them an audience. And you know what? Fine. I don't mind these people being able to speak, but I want to make sure that we're not, again, giving oxygen to the monster.
You said it right there. You said giving them an audience. They have a show on X, on Twitter. Fine. Free speech, go for it, say whatever you want. But to invite them in to the TPUSA and have them speak directly to the TPUSA audience, it's not their audience. Now you're pulling them in. I'm against that. I don't think that's good for Turning Point, and I don't think it's good for the country.
Go on. I think this is a big thing because I want people to understand, especially people on Truth that or anywhere that are listening to us, is this is a really vital point to say to people. You're not against them having their outlet. You're against other outlets platforming. And I want people to get talking points because people do need talking points because this is extremely confusing damn times. On that note, I encourage everybody to follow us on YouTube at The Daily Cheat Sheet. I encourage everybody to follow us on Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet. And a constant thanks for iTunes, Spotify, Instagram, The Daily Cheat Sheet, X at TD Cheat Sheet, and of course on Truth at The Daily Cheat Sheet. Go on, myself. It's fun. You know, there are really nice people there that are like platforming us.
We're the people you should be platforming.
And it's extremely helpful for us. We do this for fun and for free. And again, I encourage everybody to listen to every episode we've ever done. And we've never really changed our course on how we think. We're not populist in that way. We just go with our heart and our gut. And we could be wrong sometimes. Sometimes we often are.
More than just listening. Share it. Tell a friend about the show. We found that it's the best way for our show to grow. Our growth is coming from people like you telling your friends about the show. So tell everybody you know.
That's right.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
And I want to point out something. We had on this show, as we have in the past, we've had disagreements. We've argued about some stuff. We didn't even come to conclusions in which we came around to the other person's side of the equation. But I'm going to talk to Mend later. I'm going to talk to Judah later. And we're all still friends. And that's the important part, is we can have these conversations. We can be informed about what the other side is thinking, even if it's just an ideological debate like we've been having, and then we can continue to move forward. That's the point of all this. And if we get it wrong, don't worry. Biden's chief of staff will go ahead and use the auto pen and forgive us all. It's fine.
And by the way, thank you guys for repeating everything I've been saying. I want to thank you both, and I want to thank everybody. Remember, have a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are, and God bless you all.